What happens when Keanu Reeves, dressed simply in a gray t-shirt and cap, walks into a luxury aircraft dealership, hoping to quietly explore the finest models? He's underestimated and ridiculed by a blonde, arrogant attendant who believes Keanu can't possibly afford anything in the store. But things take an unexpected turn when his true identity is revealed, leading the attendant to beg for forgiveness. Trust me, you won't believe how this story ends. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from, and if you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel because tomorrow we have another special story for you. The air conditioning in the luxury aircraft showroom kept the atmosphere impeccably cool, as if even the temperature had to be exclusive. The glass walls reflected the pristine shine of the displayed aircraft, true airborne palaces. Each plane was not just a means of transportation, but a symbol of absolute status. These were extremely expensive jets, not just the kind a millionaire could buy. They were so absurdly exclusive that only oil tycoons, billionaire CEOs, and royalty members could even consider making a purchase. Just stepping into the showroom required a bank account with 8 or 9 figures. That's why when he walked in, the effect was instantaneous. Keanu Reeves stepped through the automatic doors with a calm stride, as if he had no awareness of where he was. Wearing a worn-out cap, a plain gray t-shirt, and faded jeans, he looked completely out of place in such an opulent environment. His scuffed sneakers didn't match the immaculate floor where usually only handcrafted Italian leather shoes dared to tread. The blonde salesman, a tall, slim man in a perfectly tailored suit, froze the moment he spotted the unexpected guest. For a second, he simply didn't know how to react. His eyes scanned Keanu from head to toe, as if trying to decipher what the hell this man was doing here. Instinctively, he glanced at the security guard in the corner of the store. The exchange was quick but meaningful. "Do I need you here?" The security guard, a broad-shouldered man in a black suit, studied the scene for a moment. He seemed ready to step in, but since there was no immediate disturbance, he remained watchful, waiting for a cue. The salesman swallowed dryly and adjusted his tie, as if merely having Keanu in the showroom was somehow tainting the sophistication of the place. He took a deep breath, straightened his posture, and stepped forward, adopting a professional tone, but with an undeniable hint of hostility. "Sir," he said, his voice coated with forced politeness, his smile as cold as ice. Keanu remained neutral, a faint spark of amusement flickering in his gaze. "May I help you?" The salesman pressed subtly, emphasizing help, as if making it clear that he did not expect this man to be a real customer. Keanu looked around, taking in the aircraft with genuine admiration. He seemed truly captivated by the planes. Then he turned to the salesman and smiled casually. "I'd like to see some models." The salesman's eyebrows shot up. His expression immediately shifted. A short, sarcastic scoff slipped from his lips. "Models," he repeated, as if he had just heard something utterly ridiculous. He crossed his arms, tilting his head slightly as he scrutinized Keanu further. The plain t-shirt, the faded jeans, the old cap, the idea that this man was here to buy an extremely expensive aircraft seemed absurd. Leaning slightly forward, his voice dropped a fraction, as if he was doing Keanu a favor by explaining the obvious. "Are you sure you're in the right place, sir?" The question wasn't asked out of curiosity. It was a warning, a polite way of saying, "This place isn't for you." Keanu didn't flinch. He simply took a slow breath, kept his calm smile, and answered as if the question didn't faze him at all. "Yes, I'm in the right place." The salesman's forced smile remained, but his discomfort became even more apparent. He exhaled sharply, glancing around as if expecting someone to step in and put an end to this awkward situation. "Well, we sell extremely expensive jets here, Mr. Keanu." He dragged out the words, "extremely expensive," ensuring the message was crystal clear. This was his final warning, his last chance to let Keanu know he didn't belong in the showroom and to give him a way out without embarrassment. But instead, Keanu simply nodded thoughtfully. "And that's exactly what I'd like to see." The salesman blinked twice. "I'm sorry, what?" "I want to see the most exclusive aircraft you have here." The salesman froze for a moment. It seemed like his brain was lagging, struggling to process what had just been said. He looked over at one of his colleagues behind the counter, who simply shrugged, equally perplexed. Then he turned back to Keanu, waiting for him to laugh and reveal it was all a joke. But Keanu didn't laugh. He just stood there, waiting. The salesman's lips pressed into a thin line. His irritation was now evident. He wanted to kick this man out. He wanted to tell him he wasn't about to waste time showing jets worth hundreds of millions of dollars to someone who clearly wasn't a serious buyer. But what if he was wrong? What if this scruffy-looking guy was some eccentric millionaire, a low-key tech mogul who didn't like to flaunt his wealth? The salesman inhaled deeply, exhaled in an exaggerated theatrical sigh, and gestured dismissively. Fine, if that's what you want. He turned on his heel abruptly, striding toward the VIP section of the showroom, hoping that Keanu would have the common sense to back out and leave. But Keanu followed him calmly, as if he had every right to be there. As they disappeared down the hallway leading to the private viewing area, the other employees exchanged perplexed glances. Nobody could figure out what the hell was going on. Keanu Reeves admired the luxurious aircraft. The arrogant blonde salesman watched him with disdain. Do you think the salesman's prejudice will ruin Keanu's visit? Or is there more to this story than meets the eye? The showroom was silent, except for the sharp, hurried sound of a salesman's leather shoes against the pristine marble floor. He walked fast, wanting to end this nonsense as quickly as possible. Keanu followed him without rushing, as if he was completely oblivious to the impatience and disdain being thrown at him, and that drove the salesman insane. When they reached the VIP area where the most sophisticated and unattainable jets were displayed, like relics for billionaires, the salesman abruptly stopped and gestured toward the first jet with the sharp, careless motion. Here, Falcon LX 900. He didn't even look at Keanu as he spoke. Its efficient, comfortable, Italian leather seats can handle transatlantic flights with ease. His voice was dry and patient. He wasn't presenting the jet. He was testing Keanu. Was he going to back out now? But Keanu didn't back out. He simply observed the aircraft calmly, hands in his pockets. Looks great, but this isn't the most exclusive one, is it? The salesman closed his eyes for a second, as if trying to contain his frustration. He spun on his heels aggressively, his jaw clenched in irritation, and pointed to another jet without enthusiasm. All right, Gulfstream G7500. He let out a harsh sigh and crossed his arms. $70 million this time. He deliberately emphasized every syllable, now wanting to see Keanu's expression change. He wanted this pathetic idiot to feel the shame, to squirm, to finally understand once and for all that he was in the wrong place. But Keanu didn't even blink. He just nodded, completely unfazed. Impressive, but still this isn't the most exclusive one, is it? The salesman froze in place, his face twisted into pure contempt. He let out a short, bitter laugh, void of any amusement. You're kidding me right now? He wasn't even trying to hide his anger. Enough. He pointed a finger at Keanu, his eyes filled with venom. Listen here, sir. This is not a joke. He leaned in closer, like he was trying to crush Keanu with his presence. You can't just walk in here and waste my time. Now he was speaking slowly, like he was explaining something obvious to an idiot. This isn't a mall. It's not a museum. He waved his hand around the store, laughing with pure condescension. We don't sell souvenirs. We don't cater to tourists. His mocking tone grew sharper. This isn't a theme park where you can pretend you belong. Keanu remained calm, just watching him. But the salesman wasn't finished. Now he wanted to hurt. We're talking about real money here, he said, his eyes cold and ruthless. This is for real people. People with power. People who are part of something bigger. He looked Keanu up and down, his disgust now so clear that it almost turned into hatred. And you don't look like anything other than a broke nobody. The word broke was spat out with so much force that it was almost physically painful. Silent. This time, the showroom felt frozen in time. The salesman waited, completely sure that he had finally broken this idiot. But Keanu didn't react. Nothing. No raised eyebrows. No deep sigh. Nothing. He just kept the same calm gaze as before. And then he smiled. It was a small, subtle smile, but it was enough to make the salesman feel a strange chill down his spine. Keanu stepped forward. Now he was the one looking down at the salesman. The salesman felt a tightness in his chest. Something wasn't right. Keanu tilted his head slightly and, in a calm and steady tone, said just one thing. "Can I see the most exclusive aircraft now?" The salesman went pale. His lips parted instinctively, but no words came out. For the first time in this conversation, he didn't know what to say. His brain refused to process the idea that this man was still standing there, still looking at him, still asking to see the most expensive jet. He should be humiliated. He should have turned around and left. But he didn't. He was still there, and for the first time, the salesman felt a hint of fear. Keanu asks to see the most exclusive jet in the store, pushing the salesman to the ultimate level of disdain and aggression. But even after being humiliated, Keanu remains firm. Did the salesman just make a huge mistake by underestimating him? The showroom was thick with tension. The salesman didn't know what to say. The man he had tried to humiliate was still standing there, still looking at him directly, without fear, without hesitation. That didn't make sense. Nobody endured this level of contempt without breaking. Nobody. He should be flustered. He should have lowered his head and left. But no, he was just standing there and smiling. The smile of a man who knows something others don't. The salesman felt a cold sweat trickling down the back of his neck. Something was wrong, but he couldn't back down now. Not after everything he had said. He needed to double down. "Do you still not get it?" He forced out a dry laugh, trying to regain control of the situation. "This place isn't for just anyone." He narrowed his eyes, his voice now sharp and mocking. "You might think you're impressing someone by insisting like this, but honestly," he stepped forward, his eyes now filled with pure hostility. "All you're doing is wasting our time." The entire showroom seemed frozen by now. Other employees were noticing what was happening, but none of them dared to interfere. "This isn't a game, sir," he said, his tone now cold, almost threatening. He gestured around the showroom. "These jets cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Real people do business here. Real men walk through these doors." He stared at Keanu with utter contempt. "And you are not one of them." The silence became heavy as lead, but Keanu did not look away. He did not blink. His calm did not crack for even a second. And in that moment, the salesman felt something worse than anger, worse than irritation, worse than disdain. He felt doubt. Had he just made a mistake? Was this man more than he appeared? He cleared his throat, trying to shake off that strange feeling, and doubled down one last time. He stepped even closer, standing inches from Keanu, and growled through gritted teeth. "You've wasted enough time here." His eyes narrowed, filled with venom. "And you've made us waste enough time too." He pointed toward the exit. "So get out." The showroom fell into complete silence for a few seconds. No one moved. Then finally, Keanu stepped back. The salesman felt victorious for a brief moment. He had won, or at least, that's what he thought. Because Keanu didn't leave. He let out a light sigh, glanced around as if evaluating the space, and then turned his gaze back to the salesman and smiled. A smile that was calm, relaxed, but carried something indefinable. The salesman immediately felt uneasy. "What now?" he spat, the words impatient and exhausted. Then Keanu finally spoke, his voice low, calm, and controlled. "Are you sure?" The salesman frowned. "Sure about what?" Keanu didn't answer right away. He studied him for a moment, then tilted his head slightly and repeated, his tone now carrying more weight, more intention. "Are you sure?" The salesman felt a shiver run down his spine. What the hell did that mean? Why was this guy still so confident? He should have left a long time ago, but he hadn't. He was still here, and now he was asking strange questions. The salesman tried to respond, tried to maintain control, but for the first time since this conversation started, he felt something slipping through his fingers, and he hated that feeling. When Keanu refuses to back down, the salesman doubles down on his aggression and practically throws him out of the store. But then Keanu asks an unexpected question. "Are you sure?" The salesman feels a chill of doubt. Does he really know who he's dealing with? The showroom remained silent. The salesman was still frozen, unable to react. That question, "Are you sure?" echoed in his mind in a strange, unsettling way. He should feel victorious. He had kicked this idiot out, made it clear that he didn't belong here. So, why the hell didn't he feel in control? Keanu was still standing there, motionless, firm, as if everything was going exactly as he wanted it to. And then a new sound echoed through the showroom. Footsteps, firm, quick, determined. The salesman turned immediately, expecting to see a security guard coming to reinforce his decision. But it wasn't security. It was the store manager. The blood drained from the salesman's face instantly. The man was walking briskly, his gaze locked directly onto the scene unfolding before him. The salesman knew at that moment that something was wrong. The manager stopped near them, glanced quickly at Keanu, then at the salesman, and frowned. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice calm but loaded with authority. The salesman tried to compose himself immediately. "Ah, sir." He forced a smile, but his voice came out a little shaky. "Everything is under control. This man," he shot a venomous look at Keanu, "was wasting our time. I already asked him to leave." The manager was silent for a moment. Then he laughed, a low, short laugh. But it was enough for the salesman to realize he had just made a colossal mistake. The manager crossed his arms and looked directly at him. "Wasting your time." The salesman felt a cold chill creep up his spine. "Yes." He tried to keep his composure. "I explained that we only sell to highly exclusive clients, people with immense purchasing power." The manager raised an eyebrow. "People with immense purchasing power, huh?" The salesman swallowed hard. The manager then turned to Keanu, and for the first time, he smiled genuinely. "Mr. Reeves, it's an absolute pleasure to have you in our store." The salesman froze. His heart stopped for a second. "What?" His eyes widened instantly, and his breath caught in his throat. "No, no, no, no." He turned slowly toward Keanu, and now he saw everything differently. The face, the features, the beard, the damn calm smile. Now he recognized him. He felt his entire world collapse around him. That wasn't just anybody. That was Keanu Reeves. The salesman felt his legs go weak. He tried to justify himself to explain, but no words came out. He looked at Keanu, terrified, hoping that he would correct him, that he would say this was a misunderstanding. But Keanu just smiled. He had known all along. He knew exactly what he was doing. The manager spoke again, now in a more serious tone. "I trust you've been treated with the respect you deserve, Mr. Reeves." Keanu let out a short chuckle, but didn't answer. The manager noticed immediately. His smile disappeared. He slowly turned to the salesman. "And you," he said, his voice hardening. "I think we need to have a conversation." The salesman knew at that moment that he was finished. But that's when Keanu finally delivered his killer line. He looked at the salesman, and his voice came out low, calm, and dripping with sharp irony. "You know, the richest people are often the ones who feel the least need to prove it." Silence. The salesman felt an invisible punch to the chest. He knew that line was meant for him. He knew he had just been exposed. Keanu then turned to the manager, as if nothing had happened, and said casually, "Now then, shall we take a look at the most exclusive jet?" He walked away without looking back. When the manager arrives and treats Keanu Reeves with respect, the salesman realizes his mistake in the worst way possible. But the final blow comes from Keanu's cutting remark, reducing him to nothing. Now, who's really out of place? The showroom was still silent, but now the atmosphere had completely changed. Earlier, the salesman dominated the scene, showering Keanu with arrogance and disdain. Now, he was nothing but a shadow of himself. He couldn't look at anyone. His face was pale. His hands were trembling. His body was tense, as if he were waiting for a sentence to be passed. The manager, standing beside him, kept a serious, disappointed expression. "Mr. Reeves, once again, I sincerely apologize on behalf of our team." Keanu, who had been watching everything unfold without hurry, gave a small smile. "There's no need to apologize." The manager blinked, surprised. The salesman, who already felt utterly crushed, lifted his eyes in confusion. Keanu continued, his voice calm, free of resentment. "I've seen this happen before many times." He looked directly at the salesman. People being judged by what they wear, by how they look, by what others assume they can or can't afford. Keanu took a deep breath. slipping his hands into his pockets. The problem is, these judgments are never as simple as they seem. He took a slow step forward. You looked at me and thought you knew who I was. The salesman lowered his head, unable to respond. You assumed I was a nobody, a broke guy, a dreamer who walked in here just to fantasize about a life he could never have. He paused briefly, letting his words sink into the salesman's mind. But what if I was the... The salesman snapped his head up, startled. Keanu tilted his head slightly, studying him. What if I was just a guy with no money, a dreamer with no means to buy anything here? Would that mean I didn't deserve respect? The salesman held his breath. The showroom became even quieter. Keanu smiled lightly, but his words carried weight. Because, in the end, it's not about money. It never was. He glanced around, as if speaking not just to the salesman, but to everyone in the room. It doesn't matter if someone walks in here wearing a $20,000 suit or a $20 t-shirt. Everyone deserves respect. The manager nodded slowly, clearly impressed. The salesman, however, looked smaller than ever. The weight of his own actions was crushing him. Keanu let out a quiet breath and placed a hand on the salesman's shoulder. You're young. You still have time to learn. The salesman felt a lump form in his throat. The question is, do you want to? The question hung in the air. The salesman couldn't bring himself to answer right away. Keanu didn't need to say anything else. He took a step back and turned to the manager. Now then, I think we can continue the tour. And he walked forward. No grudges, no anger, just the quiet confidence of someone who knew he had delivered the most valuable lesson possible. The manager nodded respectfully and followed Keanu. The salesman remained behind, standing in place, feeling his world spin. He looked at his own hands as if he were holding the weight of his mistake. And for the first time, he felt ashamed of himself. Keanu Reeves turns the salesman's humiliation into a powerful lesson on respect and humanity. But now the real question remains. Did the salesman actually learn anything from this? The luxury jet showroom quickly returned to normal, but the atmosphere had completely changed. The employees, who had barely noticed Keanu earlier, were now whispering among themselves, exchanging discreet glances. The salesman, still pale and speechless, couldn't move. But while the scene inside the store was settling down, something much bigger was starting to happen outside. A woman who had been observing the situation from a distance had recorded the entire scene on her phone. She captured every second of the interaction. The repercussions of the Keanu Reeves video at the jet store didn't fade over time. If anything, the situation only grew bigger. The media wouldn't stop covering the story, and the flood of social media comments never let up. The store's name, once associated with luxury and exclusivity, was now synonymous with arrogance and prejudice. The company's board of directors held an emergency meeting to figure out how to salvage their reputation. The result? Drastic changes. A few days after the scandal, the store announced a complete overhaul of its customer service approach. But the most significant change involved the salesman. After being publicly torn apart on the internet, the salesman tried his best to stay out of the spotlight. But inside the store, his situation couldn't be ignored. He was called into a decisive meeting. The manager stared at him seriously. You understand why we're here, don't you? The salesman nodded slowly, eyes downcast. I do. The manager crossed his arms. You made a serious mistake. You didn't just disrespect a customer. You damaged the entire store's reputation. The salesman felt the weight of guilt pressed down on him. I know, and I regret it. The manager stayed silent for a moment, then said, Tell me, what did you learn? The salesman hesitated before looking up. That we should never judge a customer by their appearance. The manager raised an eyebrow. That's it. The salesman swallowed hard. That respect should always come first. The manager nodded. And are you willing to change? The salesman took a deep breath. Yes, I am. The manager was quiet for a long moment before finally speaking. The stores decided not to fire you, but that doesn't mean things will stay the same. The salesman's eyes widened in surprise. I still have a job. The manager gave a small, knowing smirk. Yes, but not in your current position. The decision was simple. He would be demoted to customer service assistant, handling every single person who walked through the store's doors, regardless of their appearance or status. If you want to stay, you're going to have to learn the hard way. The salesman didn't protest. He knew he deserved it, and for the first time since the incident, he felt like this was a chance to start over. While the store tried to rebuild itself, everyone was waiting for Keanu Reeves to comment on the situation. But as always, he remained his usual discreet and elegant self. When asked by reporters about what had happened, he simply smiled and answered in his usual calm manner. This has already been resolved in the best way possible. No resentment, no revenge, just Keanu being Keanu. But deep down, he knew that this story had made a difference. He didn't want to see anyone canceled. He wanted people to learn, and this time, someone did. With the store committed to change and the salesman learning the hard way, Keanu Reeves' story didn't just become a viral lesson. It became a real example of transformation. In the end, it was never just about money or status. It was about respect, and that is the true wealth everyone should strive for. If you enjoyed this story, we have many more that will warm your heart. Click the screen to explore more stories of hope, compassion, and resilience.